and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
Hello there, beloved Ascension pioneers and beings of divine love. So in this video, I once again wanted to connect to the Elohim consciousness, which is the consciousness that holds the patterns of immaculate conception for the physical form and life in creation. I wanted to specifically address the, sometimes mistaken our perceptions about the divine archetypes or certain ideologies and concepts which are not always of this highest light. And I wanted to introduce this concept that my own Elohim consciousness shows me about the divine patterns of perfection and how they are reflected through divine archetypes that we experience on the level of our creation, and why the experience within creation is so important, so fundamental for the non-judgmental consciousness of this cosmic Christ nature. So what I'm being shown is that divine patterns of perfection are always held within the templates of illumination. These are the patterns of illumined states of evolution. So these are, in a way, illumined templates for the human consciousness as the highest possible expressions of our light expressed through our conscious experience. However, divine archetypes, which we know many, these are the archetypes that as souls we kind of go through and experience, master, and then refine and take to a new level. So we know many cosmic archetypes which are offered to us through different cosmic sciences, the science of cosmology or the cosmic astrology. So the Elohim consciousness has showed me that divine archetypes are actually, in the way, the seeds through which these divine templates of perfection can anchor through into the nature of the physical reality, so that the form in itself can become illumined. How we have, in a way, through our own human miscreations and misconstrued actions, distorted many of these patterns through our own false identities and ideologies, which have nothing to do with these divine archetypes. We've created many fallen experiences, which are experiences where our divine human nature is not aligned with the sovereign nature of our feminine and masculine forces of creation. And whenever I do these channeled Elohim group videos, they're always about bringing the creation principles and see them here, so that the human consciousness can attune to them, can align with that, which is the binding concept to a greater reality than just the third dimensional construct. So when the third dimension expands and opens into higher galactic visions through these divine archetypes, it can become as in itself a gateway for these cosmic energies that can flow through. And those beings who have, in a way, walked through many lifetimes by embodying these divine archetypes instead of false ideologies. And there's many ideologies that, in a way, through the mind constructs, they keep defending or justifying these as being divine, yet they're not. One of these false ideologies, as you know, are many religions of our world, and they're truly not here to anchor divine archetypes, because in a way they are closing down this stellar gateway for this higher consciousness to become accessible and available to all humans, to live free and to live as sovereign beings on the planet, to connect to their galactic or stellar roots and bring them here so that we can have a human experience that reflects directly the stellar experiences that we experience, of course, simultaneously as well. So in a way, those who are the guardians of these patterns of perfection, or the immaculate design, which comes from the realms of illumined truth, are here acting as bridges, or as what I call creation pillar templates, which are divine rods as, in a way, if you can imagine this lightning rod that acts as a channel between the higher celestial planes and the planes of Earth, so that the galactic roots are proportional to the roots expanded here on the planet. So when each planetary system is developed, or an individual planet is developed, and life is seeded or imprinted to evolve through it, it is always done through the patterns of perfection and immaculate design. Of course, eventually it gets distorted just as well. And when the planet is ready to ascend, and the human consciousness and the life form consciousness on it is ascending with that collective of the ascending planetary template, it has to in a way align with that as well. And that is why our work with divine archetypes is so important. And these divine archetypes come through us through many different esoteric knowledge principles, such as astrology or divination tools, tools of tarot, different mystery schools, which all help to align us with this greater totemic wisdom, because in a way these archetypes we know through our own nature of the zodiac and the stellar or cosmic archetypes through fixed stars, they all have messages of that stellar wisdom which can come through, and it can flow through this process. So I wanted to bring forth just a short message, and then I wanted to complete or conclude with a light activation I was offered today through Spirit. It's a beautiful activation to call in the universal mother principle and to seed it here on the planet, because I've shared with you before that specifically starting from this year on, the feminine principle is starting to get very strong, and it's calling us all forth for its embodiment, to take a stand, to understand that the sacred feminine, is not in any way related to women only. And I've shared in these Elohim channelings before that this has nothing to do with gender polarities. Gender polarities are a way of us experiencing life and creation through the principle of gender. However, the sacred masculine forces of creation are built within us regardless of the gender. So to awaken, to activate, integrate, and embody the cosmic heart of the Christ means that we need to address and invoke, awaken these principles within us in an equal manner. So now this feminine principle is really on the rise. It's that cosmic life serpent. It's the serpent of light that was in so many ways, in so many facets of life, systems of control and religions and doctrines, it was suppressed because this infinite serpent life force were seen as evil, because there were so many humans who were in a way unable to master the life force by themselves, which meant that they felt the need to control it, because they felt, well, if I can't control it, it's evil. Therefore, it becomes distorted because the experience in itself gets blocked. Whenever we try to control the experiences within ourselves and the experiences others are needing to experience freely, then we block that flow, and we create manipulation systems, and we create, in a way, holographic forms that then determine the quality of life, or the not so much quality of life that becomes as a physical representation of that. So many holograms that were created during the eons of time of in Earth history were carrying negative imprints, because during many alignments that these beings were intending that to evolve and to go through as an experience of the collective, the seed was planted, and that seed was misconstrued because it was no longer holding the resonance of this divine perfection of the Mother, Father, God flame that lives within our own threefolded illumined flame within ourselves. But the seed, like I always tell you, hasn't been fully rooted out, because that cannot happen. It was just very dimmed, and it was like the cover up of something is placed on top of something that always hides deep within. So when you tune into any consciousness that is distorted, that consciousness still holds truth within it. So let's say those people who are performing evil, a part of them knows what they're doing. A part of it knows it's wrong, because that inner flame it's not that it's in the holding of this judgment or the judgmental principle, but it knows itself as the truth. So that part always recognizes itself within the patterns of perfection. So when there's distortion created, there is always an acknowledgement of that. It's just that not always that acknowledgement will be heard, will be listened to, will be attuned to. And that's why many soul fragmentations have been taking place for eons of time, because that perfection was not acknowledged. The will of all, the will of the divine, which is the universal law of love, of unity, which is never impose your will or evil actions or harm anyone or anything or any life form in any way. Regardless of that, we have been creating for eons of time within the patterns of distortion. So the question now remains, how do we bring that back? How do we invoke that, not just on our own behalf, because there's those of us doing this work as pioneers, as channels for the divine light, as bringers of divine love into physical form, but we also now take a stand in holding that space in a more expanded way or fashion, which also regards many beings who are incapable or unable at this time to hold that frequency or to be held themselves within that frequency. So this, what we call the transfiguring flame of divine love, this essence which now pours through so many of us, can only do so when our heart gateway, where our gateway of the cosmic heart is fully open, so that this light can flow through. It can not only translate through us, but also magnify and potentialize its momentum through us, and it builds upon itself. So the more light quotient is in a way moving into that beautiful work of light, the more it can expand outwardly, so that these galactic roots then precipitate into the earthly roots. And I wanted to bring forth a message, which is, again, when I say channeled message, it means it comes from the overlighted group that already is. It's already within my own soul domain and mission. It's not coming outside of me, nor it's separate from you, because we're all one and unified within this field of unity. So I wanted to bring forth a message about how to do this work, and then we're going to continue with the light activation. Okay? Dear beloveds, we're gathered here today once again, after quite a while, to once again discuss the topic of major importance, the living sustenance of all life in creation. The living sustenance, or the divine mana, which flows into all patterns of creation through the divine patterns of perfection, always mimics that of divine source, or its divine origin. However, once certain extensions of those patterns are created and the law of free will is implemented, then these patterns of perfection start to function differently. They remain within the inner planes, for they always are situated within the realms of illumination, which is that spark of that Christed nature held within every single being as a descendant or a child of the divine, child of source, child of God, goddess. So when we ourselves and our facet of being known to us as our human extension, as our human experience, disconnect from that, we no longer experience that oneness, that unity, and that co-creation within divine creation principles. However, there is so much now coming through, so much is developed and coming to the surface as the sacred knowledge and the metaphysical knowledge, or the esoteric knowledge that is available now and coming through many beautiful light beings that are weaving the patterns of perfection yet again. The divine archetypes are, in a way, serving as gateways for certain patterns of perfection to manifest in physical form. However, these not so much immaculate designs, or we call them misconstrued and manipulated patterns or distorted patterns that become many different densities, can no longer hold that level of light. So they, in a way, eventually start feeling as separate from the rest. So what we can now see, if we look into the nature of that truth, is as many different aspects of a co-creative life force existing separately, but not truly. So when the idea is born within that separation process, that life can only be generated a certain way, these patterns start to get distorted. Because the original design of the patterns of perfection is that there's an infinite divine intelligence working or operating behind these different universal structures. And when the principle of magic and mystery is taken out of the equation, the patterns naturally get distorted by themselves, for there is a component of control which wants to control the events, the outcomes, and even, let's say, the outcome of the entire planet and the planetary life and structures on it. There starts to, in a way, be implemented this reality where the patterns of perfection can no longer come through in their ultimate capability. So what we can then notice is that life gets more and more difficult. Life gets more and more challenging, and we all feel that as humans, as our human counterparts. However, as always, for these immaculate designs are held within the illumined records of not just all life on the planet and beyond, but for life is a direct descent of this cosmic life force. It can be, for it is meant to be, a direct reflection of that, and each human being holds a resonance with that when they connect to their own divine archetype, which is something so unique and so uniquely fashioned and created within their own co-creation self-design, that once mastered and refined, it has a profound effect on the whole. So let's say that each human being holds a golden thread of light connecting them to the cosmic heart of Source. Through that unique golden thread, they connect to the unlimited power of co-creating with the universal flow or the universal life force of the Creator, through which they are actually implementing that basic universal law, which states that there's an infinite divine intelligence present behind all manifested reality. Once we try to, as humans, understand how reality comes about or how matter comes about, we already simultaneously start distorting it. For we want to control, through the thinking process, the magic and divinity of life and universal life force itself. And therefore, we already start creating misconstrued aspects or tangible results of that creative thinking process. Once the human mind once again aligns to the primordial life force and the nature of immaculate design, which is not just reserved for the few or those who are truly masters of themselves, but is truly living as that illumined spark within every single being. For every single being, let's say yet again, is connected with that unique golden thread to the cosmic heart of Source. Once we start weaving our unique thread, starting to co-create our own rhythmic design, we start to tap into that unlimited nature, unlimited facet of divine creativity through that universal life force. What that means is that we're no longer limited in what we are doing or creating or bringing about. Through that notion and that freedom, which is the freedom to experience without any control, we are learning to co-create with the divine. Hence, bringing forth patterns of divine, unique perfection into the world. That means that each human is a key to the living thread of patterns of perfection returning. So patterns of perfection are not some mysterious aspects that exist outside of humans. They are the living key, the living unique library within each human that they access once they start weaving their own golden thread of light, their own source self aspect. By tapping into the unique human purpose that each being has or they hold within this lifetime, they start to tap into the archetype that they're meant to embody most strongly, most vividly, most distinctly. This divine archetype holds the key or resonance with a greater galactic archetype, and then even greater archetypes that start to unfold or blossom. And that is why many shamans, let's say, they use totems or totem animals to tap into the nature of the soul, to bring through a different, unique tonal attunement to the vibratory nature, structure, and purpose of that being. And once they start to connect with their soul through that initiation, through that archetype, they start to mimic the patterns of that. And why animal totems are so important is because the animal kingdom does not have the mental capacity to judge itself, its actions, and to assess the meaning of creation and why things are the way they are, trying to understand it. So once this aspect is tapped into and harnessed, it can start to pour through the individual, and it starts to liberate the nature of what they think they must do for the society, and instead becoming who they truly are. And the more they implement that unique core creation self, the more they add that universal life force fuel to the experience not only they themselves are living, but to the experience of all beings, and contributing with their unique pattern of perfection to the patterns of light that are being woven within the structure and nature of this planetary existence reality that we are living as our human counterparts. The first step towards weaving the patterns of perfection is the activation of what we have already spoken about, the inner logos, which is the unified masculine and feminine force of creation. Through this unified force field, each human becomes not only a lightning rod that connects them to this divine archetype, which naturally dissolves all false ideologies and identities, but also brings the horizontal fusion and merge into the planetary structure, into the life reality that is being seeded through each individual as unique experience that is never separate from the experience of the whole. So patterns of perfection truly can be accessed within our nature and are the potential of each human becoming their divine human Christ itself, embodied. So, to start the first initiation, let us now start with the light activation, which invokes the universal mother consciousness and roots it to the planetary existence, in a way seeing that as a symbiosis process of the universal mother goddess and the earth mother goddess, which truly are one, have always been and always shall be. For all creation mimics the illumined truth that is the foundation for all life, for the patterns of perfection that we as our human illumined extensions are bringing about. And therefore, initiating the process of physical embodiment through transformation, transmutation, and transfiguration process, through the most intense transfiguring flame of divine love, which synthesizes the experience of each unique individual within the whole. For only through transfiguring flame of divine love can each individual not only feel realized within themselves and their own individual nature, but also they can feel how they are merged and unified with all. And once they are, they could never again harm or go against any other form of life, any other being, any animal species, mineral, plant life. That is when life is truly seen as sacred, and reverence for that life is established within each individual, who undergoes this initiation. So now let us begin with the light activation. Invoke now your I Am presence, stating, I am that I am, and in the name of my I Am presence, I invoke the Universal Mother Goddess, spinning her wheel of life and pouring through all creation. I see this Universal Mother as an endless, infinite figure of light, almost as in the stellar archetypes of the Divine Mother, pouring out cosmic mana from this huge bowl. In this bowl that she is holding, this water of life is being stirred. And we can see that as the spinning nature of a galaxy. And through this spinning nature of the Mother Goddess, life starts to precipitate. And as life travels this way, and it precipitates through many different systems of life, star systems, systems of worlds, individual planets, human consciousness, animal consciousness, plant consciousness, mineral consciousness, planetary consciousness itself, and all other forms of life, seen and unseen, acknowledged, not yet acknowledged, aware and unaware. They're all being precipitated through this cosmic mana, force of life. And as we step in our devotion, in our initiation and intention to constantly receive from this cosmic overflowing of all life and the life force that is being stirred through the Universal Mother Goddess principle, we are acting as lightning rods for that process. And now we see how our illumined lightning rod is ready to receive this outpouring of cosmic light as it travels through us, moving into the roots of our existence, of our experience, that every experience we've ever held on earth, and all beings ever had and experienced here on earth, can be transmuted through the patterns of perfection that are held within this cosmic union. And we now see how life is being replenished and nourished, revitalized constantly through this cosmic mana, the grace of the mother principle of life, which is the principle of life in creation, the Holy Spirit. And we see that moving and traveling through the roots into the core of our planet, of Mother Gaia, so that the cosmic and planetary goddess, the cosmic and physical goddess deity, can be once again unified within the hearts of men as children of the divine. And when fully feeling this unification process, we feel how Earth responds, sends a wave impulse, a spiraling impulse back to us, so that this energy that is being once again restored within her and all life upon her comes back to the surface through the roots back into our lightning rods, which act as a vertical access point for the transformational process to occur horizontally, so that the father-mother aspect can be fully unified. We now see how this wave that is being reverberated through the Gaia consciousness, the consciousness of the earthly mother, the direct goddess descendant, is bringing back the alignment with the patterns of perfection. And we see how this life force directly connects us with our own golden thread of light. And this impulse, for we have opened ourselves to receive, creates a dynamic expression of this golden thread of light moving through our basic lightning rod or our pillar, our ascension pillar, it moves through and once again it signals back and plugs into that cosmic stream of life force, into the universal mother principle. For it has given us the impulse to connect to even higher aspect of who we are at a stellar, galactic, and cosmic levels. In this way, we feel we are being precipitated through this cosmic mana, through our golden thread of light, and a decree comes forth through our sacred heart. In the name of my I Am Presence, I vow and devote myself to co-creating as one with the universal life force, as one with my Mother, Father, God aspect that express themselves in my own inner polarities of the masculine and feminine forces of creation, that reflects into the nature of my physicality and all physical expressions and all life extensions that I'm experiencing, co-creating, and sharing with others. Thus, I vow to once again realign and co-create with the divine patterns of perfection that come through the golden cord of light that anchors me into my own core source experience, wisdom, and beingness, so that my physical human self living on this planet, my cosmic self, can once again be fully unified as they are, truly. Through my own divine archetype, I connect to all archetypes of wisdom. These archetypes are held within the life forms that are natural descent of the Mother Principle. And when I activate them within myself, I also help to dissolve all that is discordant, that was misconstrued, misused, manipulated, and justified through human ego. As I do that, I create a new holographic vision of divine patterns of perfection that only they can sustain my being, my physicality, my radiant self, and with that extension, I radiate with that truth into the reality which I live and experience every now moment. And so, bringing those patterns of perfection and the immaculate design of the universal Mother Principle, I hold a resonance with that truth. Therefore, I am a way shower and a template of that truth that mimics divinity in human form. Knowing that I am free, and I also help to liberate all life forms that are not yet held within the patterns of perfection. And so, I love and I set all life free, starting with embracing my own unique humanity. By seeing the highest potentiality of my own human life force expression, I embrace the cosmic and earthly as one, unifying them in my sacred flame of the Christ, living that through my true embodiment, and restoring all life back into its true immaculate design of the purity and perfection of life as it truly is in its illumined state. So be it, and so it is.